I was humiliated by my mother-in-law on the day of my husband's promotion at the company he worked for, but what I didn't imagine was the secret that would be revealed that night, and it would change everything. Hello, welcome to this channel. Like and subscribe to this channel, enjoy, and turn on notifications. The luxury hotel's ballroom was packed with people. Elegant laughter, sparkling wine glasses clinking, sophisticated dresses, and impeccable suits paraded through the room. The celebration was in honor of my husband Gustavo's promotion to become CFO of one of the largest companies in the country. I watched with pride, watching him chat with partners and greet colleagues. He had fought hard for this position. Gustavo was always dedicated, tenacious. I witnessed his sleepless nights, his moments of frustration, the responsibilities weighing heavily on his shoulders. The promotion wasn't a gift, it was an achievement, and I more than anyone knew how much he deserved it. I was holding a glass of white wine, feeling the refreshing liquid touch my lips, when the sharp voice of Dona Eunice, my mother-in-law, reached my ears, cold as a blade. This girl isn't fooling anyone. She only married my son for his own gain. Ever since she came into his life, she's been surrounded by luxury, but she's never known what real work is. The blow was unexpected, but not unprecedented. The worst part is that it wasn't said in private. Some people nearby heard it and looked away, embarrassed. My heart sank, but I didn't let her see any shock in my expression. I learned early on that the best way to face an affront is to show no weakness. I took a deep breath and turned to face her. She wore a finely tailored dress, a stone necklace glittered around her neck, and her gaze carried that old superiority she never hid from me. From the beginning, she never accepted me. To her, I would never be worthy of her son, and today, at the celebration of her great conquest, she made a point of belittling me. "Good evening to you too, Mrs. Eunice," I replied, forcing a polite smile. "Don't play dumb, Camilla. Everyone knows you clung to Gustavo to live like a lady." There's no point in pretending to be offended, as she smirked, pleased with her own provocation. I glanced around and saw a few people pretending not to pay attention, but their furtive glances didn't deny they were absorbing every word. I could have retaliated right then and there, could have told her many truths she wasn't ready to hear, but I chose silence. Ever since I started dating Gustavo, Eunice never missed an opportunity to belittle me. To her, I was just some random person who appeared out of nowhere and hooked her son. She never wanted to know my story, never gave me a chance. And now, even in a moment of celebration, he insisted on reinforcing his distorted view of me. I felt a warmth rise in my chest. It wasn't shame. It wasn't anger. It was a certainty building inside me that soon, the truth would come out. What she didn't realize was that Gustavo was carrying a secret about me. A secret that, when revealed, would make her mother bitterly regret everything she'd said. And in that moment, looking at her triumphant expression, I wished from the bottom of my soul I'd been there to witness her downfall. The party was still lively around me, but for me, time seemed to have slowed down. Dona Eunice's words still echoed in my mind, not because I doubted myself, but because I knew what was coming. I could have ignored the comment. I could have stepped back and let the night pass without further ado, but something inside me burned. Not out of anger, but out of conviction. One day, Eunice would swallow every word with regret. "It's okay, love." Gustavo's voice brought me back. He had approached without me noticing, his eyes attentive and caring. I smiled lightly and touched his arm. "Yes, you are," I lied, because I didn't want to ruin his evening. But he knew my expression. "My mother said something, didn't she?" I looked down for a moment. It wasn't the first time he'd noticed, but that night, I didn't want to make it a problem for him. But before I could respond, I felt a presence beside me again. "Now, son, I'm just talking to your wife," Eunice said, adopting an innocent expression that would fool anyone who didn't know her well. Gustavo sighed, running his hand over his face. "Mom, not today," he said, his voice firm but not loud. "You ask me not to talk, but you don't ask me to lie, do you? Everyone here knows Camilla hasn't tried a single day in her life." While you were working yourself to death, she stayed home enjoying the luxuries you provided. My fingers tightened around the stem of my glass. You don't even know who I am, I murmured, trying to remain calm. She let out a mocking laugh. Oh, honey, I know exactly who you are, a gold digger who saw in Gustavo a chance to change her life. I felt Gustavo stiffen beside me. I could have responded with another provocation. I could have attacked, but something better came to mind. I smiled. So tell me, Mrs. Eunice, if you know so much about me, can you tell me what I did before I met your son? She blinked, as if she hadn't expected the question. What does it matter? We all know you had nothing, so you don't know. I left my glass on the table next to me and crossed my arms. I worked, Dona Eunice. I've worked since I was very young. I studied while I worked, and I achieved something many people never could. She huffed, crossing her arms. So what happened? Your son knows, but I don't think it's the right time for you to find out yet. Her eyes narrowed. She hated not having control of the situation. Gustavo squeezed my hand and leaned in, whispering in my ear, "Do you want to leave?" I looked around. No. I wouldn't run away. No. Then a new voice came from behind us. Camilla, the female voice made me turn, and my heart raced. It was a woman I hadn't seen in years. A woman who knew exactly who I was. And there, in front of everyone, a new chapter in the story was about to begin. The room, which had previously seemed filled only with the glow of chandeliers and the murmur of elegant conversation, grew smaller around me. I turned slowly, feeling a chill run down my spine as I recognized that voice. Isabella, my tone sounded more surprised than I intended. The woman in front of me smiled, her eyes shining with something between nostalgia and mystery. She wore a wine-colored dress of fine fabric and a discreet necklace, but it was impossible not to notice the firm posture and confidence in her expression. Long time no see, Camilla, she said, and I noticed a few people around paying attention, sensing the tension in the air. My mother-in-law, who had been flaunting her superiority until then, looked at Isabella curiously. Do you know each other? Gustavo asked, casting a curious glance between us. I took a deep breath. Yes, we've worked together in the past. Eunice's face lit up with a sneer. Oh, so we'll finally learn Camilla's great past. She talked so much about work, but never mentioned exactly what she did. Actually, Mrs. Eunice, I think you'll be surprised, and Isabella interjected, her tone almost amused. My mother-in-law raised her eyebrow dismissively. I doubt it. I wasn't sure I wanted that to happen there, at that party. But Isabella had always been a direct woman. She looked me in the eye, as if silently asking if I wanted to continue. I swallowed hard. The truth would come out sooner or later. Camilla wasn't just my colleague, Visabla began, gently swirling the glass of sparkling wine in her hand. She was one of the best in our field. The air around us seemed to have grown denser. Area? What area? Eunice frowned impatiently. It was Gustavo who answered before me. Camilla was an economist. Eunice's eyes widened. What? I sighed, deciding to get it over with. I graduated in economics and worked as a financial analyst at one of the largest investment firms in the country. I worked hard to get where I am today. Eunice opened her mouth, but no words came out. It was clear she was trying to process the information. She'd always thought I was a frivolous woman, someone without ambition. Knowing I'd had a solid career before Gustavo contradicted everything she believed. And you know what's most interesting? Isabella smiled, looking directly at Eunice. Camilla not only worked at the company, but was one of the most promising analysts we've ever had. In fact, she turned down a promotion to be with Gustavo. A piercing silence filled the room. My heart pounded. Is this true? Gustavo looked at me surprised. I took a deep breath. Yes, I had received an offer to be an investment director, but at that time, our lives were changing. You needed to move to another city for your job, and I made my choice. He blinked a few times, processing. Eunice, on the other hand, was pale. That's impossible, she murmured. It seems you were mistaken about me, I replied, feeling a pang of satisfaction. But before anyone could say anything else, Isabella smiled. And from what I know, Camilla didn't abandon her career completely. Gustavo frowned. What do you mean? I knew there was no turning back from that moment. It means that Camilla has not only worked hard in the past, but that she has a talent that many companies would give anything to have. My mother-in-law looked ready to explode. What do you mean by that? Isabella turned to me, her gaze assessing. I think it's time to tell your husband the truth about what you've been doing these past few months. Gustavo looked at me confused. Eunice was paralyzed, as if her vision of me was crumbling before her eyes. I closed my eyes for a brief second and gathered my courage. Okay, I'll tell you. The weight of the eyes on me was almost palpable. Gustavo watched me closely, waiting for an answer. Eunice, still in shock, tried to process everything she'd heard. Isabella, well, she seemed amused by the situation, as if she already knew the outcome of this story before I even told it. I took a deep breath. There was no longer any reason to hide. A few months ago, I received an offer to work as a financial consultant for an international investment fund, I began, keeping my voice steady. Gustavo frowned. Consultant? You never told me anything about it, because I wanted to make sure it was viable before bringing it to you. At first, I wasn't sure I wanted to go back to work, but the offer was irresistible. I work from home, conduct market analysis, and assist in strategic decision-making for a select group of investors. Eunice let out an incredulous laugh. Oh, please, do you really want us to believe that you, who spent years without having to worry about anything, are now a key player in an investment fund? Before I could respond, Isabella crossed her arms and gave her a sharp look. You should do more research on your daughter-in-law, Mrs. Eunice. Camilla's name is respected in the financial market. If she wanted to, she could be leading a company right now. Gustavo turned to me, his eyes filled with surprise and admiration. I didn't know, I gave a smirk, I know. But now you know. For a moment, Gustavo said nothing. He just watched me, as if rearranging all the pieces of our story in his mind. Eunice, however, couldn't hide her frustration. Her expression shifted from disbelief to discomfort, and finally, something that resembled anger. So you're saying you worked this whole time without saying anything? Yes. And Gustavo never knew, not until now, she snorted. That's absurd. If it were true, you would have told me from the beginning. Gustavo, however, seemed to see the situation differently. Camilla, why didn't you tell me sooner? I touched her hand, squeezing it lightly. Because I didn't want you to think I was doing this to prove a point. I wanted it to be my choice, not a response to your mother's teasing. He nodded slowly, as if absorbing every word. You've always been amazing, and I had no idea how much. Eunice gritted her teeth, her frustration evident. This doesn't change anything. She snapped, her voice higher than usual. You still took advantage of his money. It was Isabella who responded first. Do you have any idea how much Camilla can earn per month just with this job? Eunice fell silent. Much more than Gustavo earns now, I continued, looking directly at her. The color drained from her face. You're lying, I crossed my arms, I'm not. But honestly, your opinion doesn't matter to me anymore. Eunice looked at Gustavo, expecting him to say something in her favor, but to her surprise, he smiled at me, full of pride. I never doubted you, Camilla, but knowing all this now only makes me admire you even more. Eunice's shock was palpable. For the first time, she realized she'd lost, but the best was yet to come. I took a deep breath before dropping the final bombshell of the night. Oh, and one more thing, Mrs. Eunice. Remember when I said I turned down a promotion to be with Gustavo? She gave me a suspicious look. Yes. What's wrong with that? I smiled, tasting the sweet taste of victory. I've received a new proposal, and this time I'm going to accept. The silence that followed was deafening. Eunice was devastated. The impact of my words was like a punch to Eunice's stomach. The silence around us became almost awkward. For a moment, no one seemed at a loss for words. Her expression wavered between disbelief and anger, as if the mere idea of attaining a prestigious position were a personal affront. "You're kidding," she finally said, her voice thick with contempt. "You have to be." Gustavo squeezed my hand, his expression softening into a smile. "No, Mom, she's not kidding." Eunice turned to him, indignant. "Do you think this is right, Gustavo? She hid something this big from you. And now she comes with this promotion story, as if it were the most natural thing in the world." Gustavo let out a patient sigh, but his tone was firm. "You know what I think, Mom. I don't think you ever really tried to get to know the woman I married. You fixed your image on her and refused to see anything else." Eunice's face contorted in indignation. "I just wanted to protect him." "Protect myself from what?" He frowned. "From the woman who gave up a great opportunity for me. From the woman who's now being recognized for her incredible work. If anyone here has been deceived this whole time, it's been me, and it wasn't even Camilla." Eunice's eyes widened, and I knew those words struck a chord in her pride. For the first time, she was being confronted directly by her own son. "Gustavo, me." But before she could make up an excuse, I decided to end the matter once and for all. "Eunice, I don't need your approval. I never have. But since you like talking about money so much, let me tell you something that might interest you." She hesitated, unsure if she wanted to hear it. "The company that made me the offer is one of Gustavo's main competitors." Her eyes widened. "What?" Gustavo looked at me in surprise. "I was going to tell you before I made any decisions, love," I added, taking his hand. But the offer was tempting. Eunice put her hand to her mouth, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. For someone like her, who always boasted about her son's position, knowing that I was about to occupy a position as important as, or even more important than, his was unacceptable. "You can't accept this proposal," she exclaimed, louder than she intended. Some people around her tried to hide it, but it was obvious they were paying attention to every detail of the confrontation. "I can and perhaps I will," I replied, crossing my arms. "You're doing this for revenge, aren't you?" I gave a wry smile. "No, Ms. Eunice, I'm doing this because I'm good at what I do. And because I deserve this opportunity." Gustavo looked at me for a long moment, and then, to his mother's surprise, he smiled. "I support you, Camilla." "Whatever your choice." Eunice looked at her son betrayed. "You can't be serious." He nodded, and then I knew, no matter what Eunice said, she had lost. But there was still one last play. "You know, Eunice, maybe now you can see that I never needed your son's money. But I wonder, if it were the other way around, would you have accepted Gustavo if he were just an ordinary man without all that wealth?" Her silence was the answer I needed. And then, before she could react, I took Gustavo's hand and smiled. "I think we've stayed here long enough." "Shall we?" He smiled back. "Shall we?" Eunice stood there watching her vision of me crumble, but honestly, I couldn't care less. We left the party without looking back. On the way home, Gustavo was silent, but I knew what he was thinking. He was processing everything that was about to happen, the weight of Eunice's words, and the fact that he'd finally discovered what I'd done in silence, far from his perception. But to my surprise, he didn't seem frustrated. On the contrary, he seemed relieved. When we got home, he pulled me into a tight hug. "I didn't know any of this, Camilla," he said, his voice hoarse. "I admire you even more now. I didn't want to hide anything from you, but I didn't want you to think I was competing with you. I just wanted my own space, to show myself that I can be more than just Gustavo's wife." He looked at me, his eyes holding a deep love and understanding. "I never thought you were just that." "Never, but now, seeing everything you've achieved, I feel proud." I smiled, touching his face. "I just need you by my side, Gustavo. I don't want this to change our relationship." "It won't change anything, Camilla." "Nothing." The atmosphere in the house was different, lighter. I knew we had taken an important step in our relationship, something that had previously seemed impossible. overcoming an invisible wall that had stood between us and the vision of a life envisioned by his mother. But while I was grateful for Gustavo's trust and love, there was still a weight on my heart. Eunice, she still hadn't digested the truth. And it was inevitable that I would have to face the final confrontation. The next day, I received a message from Isabella. She informed me that, after our conversation, Eunice had tried to call her several times. Apparently, I was on the verge of a nervous breakdown, frustrated at not knowing what to do with the public humiliation I'd endured the night before. I knew this was just the beginning. That afternoon, Gustavo looked at me with a mischievous smile. "I think my mom will want to talk to you." I raised an eyebrow. "And you'll let me?" he shrugged. "It'll be interesting to see what she has to say. And who knows, maybe she'll change her mind about you." I knew it was his attempt to support me, but I also knew he was tired of the tension between him and his mother. I didn't want to be a battlefield anymore. The doorbell rang shortly after. I knew who it was before I even opened the door. Eunice stood there, her face pale and her eyes red. She didn't look like the confident woman she'd been before, but rather broken, her posture lost. "Camilla," she began, but she couldn't look me in the eye. I remained silent, waiting for her to speak. "I didn't know you were so dedicated," she said, her voice breaking. "I just wanted to protect Gustavo. He's all I have," and she fell silent for a moment, taking a deep breath. "I was wrong. I saw you as a threat, when in fact you were just trying to be yourself." Those words fell upon me like a storm, watering the fertile ground of resentment I'd been cultivating. It wasn't easy to hear them, but it wasn't impossible either. After all, we all make mistakes. I didn't want to continue the cycle of anger. Not anymore. "I understand, Eunice. You always wanted the best for him, but we need to understand that what's best for him isn't always what we imagine. I never wanted to be a threat to you. I just wanted to be the best version of myself, alongside Gustavo." She looked up, her expression genuinely regretful. I never imagined I would hurt her like this. I see now, clearly, that I was unfair. I took a deep breath and, for a moment, imagined what Eunice's life would have been like if she had given herself more room for her own choices, without relying so heavily on her son. She had always lived in his shadow, controlling every detail of her life. "What are you going to do now?" I asked. She sighed, her shoulders slumping as if the weight of the world were on her. "I don't know, maybe I have to learn to back off a little. Letting Gustavo live his life without my interference." There was something genuine in her voice. The woman in front of me was rebuilding herself, just like me. It wouldn't be an easy change, either for her or for me, but it was clear that a new cycle was about to begin. "I hope you can find your own path, Eunice. And that, somehow, we can build a more balanced relationship." She felt tears in her eyes. "I'll try, Camilla. I'll really try." And so, with the sincerity of someone who finally sees themselves, the chapter of tension and confrontation closed. What remained was a new beginning, not only for Gustavo and me, but also for Eunice, who could finally begin to live more independently. When she left, Gustavo looked at me, and for the first time, I saw in him the calm of someone who knew that, despite the adversities, our relationship was stronger. "I love you, Camilla." He pulled me into a tight hug, as if to reaffirm everything we already knew, but which was now clearer than ever. "I love you too, love. And now let's do this together." And so, a story of trials and triumphs ended. There were no more secrets, no more fears. What existed now was a future full of possibilities. Together, Gustavo and I, stronger and more confident than ever. And Eunice, well, maybe she still had a long way to go, but at least now she knew that true strength came from within. If you enjoyed this moving story of overcoming and transformation, don't forget to leave a like. Like the video, subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and activate the bell so you don't miss any updates. Share with your friends so they can also embark on this journey of empowerment and life change. Don't miss the chance to be part of this community. See you in the next video.